All right, good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to welcome everyone to the special joint session between the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Arts and Culture Commission for their meeting on Tuesday, May 12th. In front of you, we have this evening's agenda. We also have a special guest speaker that's going to be joining us. Before going into roll call, I would like to present to you a couple of items for your consideration and acceptance for tonight's agenda. We'd like to make two little adjustments in the agenda for this evening. The first would be item 9A, which is our Department Master Plan presentation by Mr. Michael Svets from Pros Consulting. We'd like to move item 9A to item 5A and moving 5A to 5B. And that would just allow Mike to be able to get on the road a little earlier so he can head down and enjoy his family and perhaps even a meal this evening. And then secondly, we'd like to add one additional item. That would be item 9E, and this would be a request for action of the Arts and Culture Commission related to a new meeting date of June 17th for their meeting calendar. So those would be the two updates and items in our agenda. So with that, if there's no other questions on those two adjustments in our schedule, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for roll call. Is everyone in acceptance of that?
Yes.
Yes. Sounds great. Thank you much. Miss Kathy Wise, may we have a roll call for Arts and Culture Commission, please?
Chairperson Quisenberry.
Present.
Vice Chairperson Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Present.
Commissioner Lyra.
Present.
Commissioner Moss.
Present.
We have a quorum of the Arts and Culture Commission. May I now have a roll call for the Parks and Recreation Commission, please?
Chairperson Gummer.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Polican.
Here.
Commissioner Brinkman.
Here.
Commissioner Byram.
Present.
Commissioner Gorman.
Here.
Commissioner Pierce.
Virtually present.
Outstanding. We have a quorum of the Parks and Recreation Commission. May I now ask for approval of tonight's agenda as amended by the Arts and Culture Commission? By roll call?
I'd like to approve the minutes as listed, unless anyone else has a review.
Are we doing agenda?
My apologies, Ms. Quisenberry. I just wanted to reaffirm we're looking for approval of tonight's agenda via roll call from Arts and Culture Commission. So, Ms. Wise, if we could
I'll take a motion to add to our agenda tonight.
To approve.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor will go by roll call vote. Ms. Wise?
Commissioner Sinclair.
Yes.
Commissioner Lyra.
Yes.
Commissioner Moss.
Yes.
What? I thought Lindsay did the motion and Nancy did the second.
Right, but they still have.
I still have to do that. Okay. All right. Chairperson Quisenberry.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. We have approval of the Arts and Culture Commission for tonight's agenda. May we have a motion for the amended agenda from the Parks and Recreation Commission?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
I'll second.
Right.
Third.
We have a first and a second. Can we have a roll call vote for that motion?
Chairperson Gummer.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Polican.
Yes.
Commissioner Brinkman.
Yes.
Commissioner Byram.
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pierce.
Yes.
All right, we have an approval of tonight's agenda for the Parks and Recreation Commission. Thank you all for that. And now we'll move on to approval of the minutes. This will be for the Arts and Culture Commission. We have 2 sets of minutes. The first is for a work study February 12th and March 11th, and then a regular set of meeting minutes from February 19th. Can we have a motion for those?
I make a motion to approve the minutes this time.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Can we have a roll call vote for the approval of the minutes?
Chairperson Quisenberry.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Smith.
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Yes.
Commissioner Lyra.
Yes.
Commissioner Moss.
Yes.
All right, we have an approval of the minutes for the Arts and Culture Commission. Thank you, Commissioners. May we now have an approval of minutes via motion for the Parks and Recreation Commission regular meeting for March 10th, 2020.
I'll make the
I'll
motion
make a
to
motion
approve.
to approve the Parks and Rec regular meeting minutes from March 10th, 2020.
I'll second.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairperson Gummer.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Polikin.
Yes.
Commissioner Brinkman.
Yes.
Commissioner Byram.
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pierce.
Yes.
Outstanding. Thank you, Commissioners, for approval of the Parks and Recreation minutes. Next on our agenda is scheduled announcements, presentations. Item 5, amended earlier this evening and approved, is the move of new business 9A to 5A. This is the presentation of the department's master plan. This comes to each commission in a shared format. It will require separate action by each commission. At the evening, we are seeking, following this presentation, recommendation for approvals and moving forward for staff presentation to the town council for their review and possible adoption of the master plan moving forward. That will be presented on May 18th during their regular study meeting. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Mr. Michael Spetz again to our meeting. You've met with Mike on several different occasions. This is his summary report to you for your feedback, and we'll take it from there. So, Mike, come on aboard.
I always feel short after Brian because I end up having to lower the microphone. So anyway, just as an FYI, if I start to squirm or look like I'm a little uncomfortable, this is the most I've been dressed up in the last 70 days. Just bear with me as we go forward. So, but thank you so much. This is the culmination. So really, all of the information that I'm going to share with you is information that you have seen either previously as part of the 4 previous presentations and or as part of the master plan. So I'll just kind of touch on what we're going to go through just to kind of refresh everybody's memory related to community need, talk about the level of services related to parks, facilities, amenities, capital improvement plan, the total cost of ownership, which really touches on the simple fact that you can build anything with one-time dollars, but you still have to manage, operate, and program it. And then, of course, implementation strategies and next steps. So, the community needs component, you recognize that we have gone through an extensive process to get us to this point. We have broken these priorities out in terms of recreation programs and services, art and culture programs and services, and then, of course, the infrastructure component. Again, community special events came out number 1, fitness and wellness programs number 2, Open Swim 3, and I think the thing that probably surprised most everybody was the target shooting. That was something that rated as high, important, and high unmet need. It doesn't necessarily mean that Prescott Valley as an agency needs to provide that, but it certainly can look to partner and or work with private providers to enhance those opportunities going forward. The things in the middle and things at the bottom, really, it doesn't mean that you don't do them. It simply means that you do less of them, or you focus less investment or energy around doing them. And so I always say the things at the bottom are the things that if you're doing them, continue to do them at the level that you're doing them. If you are not doing them, then now is not the time to consider, introducing those, at least in the next few years, until your community starts to change and grow. Art and culture programs, again, had quite a bit of alignment with regards to Parks and Recreation, in particular the community festivals component, programs in parks, and then, of course, you do have music, after-school programs, and theater. Again, same theory applies. The things in the middle, you're very strategic about. You're not all in, but you make very good decisions about when you introduce those. The things at the bottom, if you're not doing them, now would not be the time to invest energy and resources into offering those to the community. Park facility amenities, again, same rules apply, but just as a reminder, that aquatic facility indoors came out as number one, followed by both kinds of walking trails, meaning soft surface as well as paved restroom buildings, which has been a topic at the town council level. And this is not just about building more, but it's really about refreshing and updating the ones that you have. And then you see the multi-gen center. So we do recognize that the town is certainly moving in a direction of creating some sort of agreement with the YMCA. And so a couple of these things identified as programs and services, as well as facilities and amenities, are things that through that partnership may actually be realized fairly soon. Now, granted, I think COVID has a way of tempering quite a bit of the expectations in terms of how quickly things come forward, but I think that's just the reality of the situation. I can tell you that I entered into a very similar agreement with the YMCA when I was in Charlottesville, and then the Great Recession hit. The anticipation was that they would have a facility built and open within 5 years. That ended up being closer to 8 or 9 years. So kind of gives you a realistic understanding of how this kind of economic downturn can impact those kind of projects moving forward. So levels of service, I will try not to bore you with too much detail that I've bored with you with previously, but there's a lot of things that go into determining level of service, a lot of different considerations, some of them operational, some of them financial, some of them are opportunities to actually develop land, and obviously community need, market potential indices and so on and so forth. So it's not just a grab at the air and try and figure out what it works for you all. A lot of data points were utilized to establish this methodology. I think, again, it's really important to recognize your growth. You're currently at about 50,000 people, and as I will say again, about 40% of that population right now is living within master planned communities, but we also expect that 100% of that growth will occur in master planned communities. So that kind of tees up the methodology that we approach this. We recognize that master planned communities have impact on your services, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a positive way, meaning that if they are providing things that you would typically provide as part of your public park and recreation system, it's one less thing that the system itself has to provide. And so The caveat is to understand that there are certain things that are provided by master plan communities that are only available to those that live in master plan communities. So we have taken that into consideration by looking at this through kind of a three-pronged approach. That what is the level of service that's appropriate for master plan communities to provide to their residents? What are then the things that master plan communities provide to their residents that the town of Prescott Valley needs to provide to residents who don't live in master plan communities? And then the third level is certainly what are those things that the town needs to provide to all potential 95,000 people that may be living here by 2034. So it's kind of this three-pronged approach to doing this. And so when we look at it from a master plan communities, their level of investment is really going to be around neighborhood parks. I know that seems like a significant amount of acreage, but when you're starting to add 46,000 folks, that is, and you're going to try to achieve a 3.4 acres per thousand for neighborhood parks, then that's kind of what that number ends up being. I think the other caveat to recognize is that when we talk about neighborhood parks and we talk about community parks and we talk about the number of acres that are needed for every 1,000 folks, the 3.4 acres per thousand is in alignment with the general plan. And if we deviated from that, it would trigger a general plan amendment, and that triggers a whole bunch of other things that can potentially happen, in particular around impact fees. So the assumption is that we made the alignment with your general plan going forward. Then you have the town level of service for the population of 30,000 folks. You can see that the number of park types do get expanded, but the two that we're really focused on, again, are neighborhood parks and community parks. And your need looking out to 2034 for just the town of 30,000 folks is really the 57 acres for neighborhood parks. One thing that we recognize is that master plan communities are going to be in the business of providing mini parks and neighborhood parks. Your town is in the business of providing all four of these classifications. The key is to recognize that you currently do have a good level of service for 30,000 folks when it comes to mini parks, community parks, and special use parks. But when you consider that community parks are something that is not being provided by master plan communities and needs to be provided for the town, that is the acreage that we focus on that the town will look to provide for the 95,000 folks. So mini parks, neighborhood parks, master plan communities, they're going to focus on that primarily for their residents. Then you have the neighborhood park, the mini park and neighborhood park component that is going to be focused on the town providing it for 30,000 folks. But then you have the community park element that is really about the town needing to provide that for all 95,000 folks. So we look at it and say the town, when it considers what it needs to provide for all 95,000 folks, is in that community park classification category. And that equates to about 212 acres of land. And then we have an overall level of service chart. I will not read this to you other than to say that the town needs to provide the neighborhood park acreage that we identified for the 30,000 folks, and it needs to provide the neighborhood park or the community park acreage for all 95,000 folks. The amenities that are identified as needed are the amenities that you start to consider that need to go into the parkland that you develop. So whether it's neighborhood parks or whether it is community parks, it creates a guideline or a baseline or a starting point for you that says, we have this land, now what are we going to do with it? What are the experiences that are going to be provided as part of new park development? And those guidelines around picnic shelters and athletic fields and so on and so forth create a starting point for you to have a conversation with the community when you move in the direction of what's called site-specific master planning. And so very similar to kind of what happened with Santa Fe Park. Why Santa Fe Park has the elements in it is simply because of the site-specific master planning process that occurred, that the community achieved consensus around and said, these are the elements that are going to be included in Santa Fe Park. And probably up until about March 12th, it had been going pretty well. And I'm sure once we come out of COVID, it will return to being a very popular park for you. So one of the things that we've talked about previously is the fact that anything that you build, we have to consider other costs. And so we talk about it in terms of total cost of ownership. You have the capital investment dollars. You have the life cycle replacement dollars. That's the bookends of what we call total cost of ownership. Those two components are related to the infrastructure that makes up parks. So you build it once, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to go in, like your restrooms, and refresh them, renovate them, majorly upgrade them 15, 20, 25 years later. The middle is that operations and maintenance, and this is what council is really always going to be honed in on, that says, or should be honed in on, that says, if we spend this amount of money to build something, what's it going to need? What are we going to have to add to our operational budget year over year? And if you can't add those dollars to your operational budget, even if you have the money to build it, then don't do it. And that's why we did the analysis that we did. So the first thing is that capital improvement program. Again, we divided it up into 3 buckets. The first bucket being really just about life cycle replacement. The second bucket meaning what within your existing parks can you do to them to better meet community need. And then the third bucket is that big picture bucket related to new park development or facility development. And simply, the assumptions were that they had to be financially viable. In other words, if you can't afford to build it and you can't afford to maintain it and operate it, then don't. It includes projects that are likely to be implemented within a 10-year planning period. One thing to consider is, and I'll share this in just a second, is that it wasn't intentional, but it worked out that the majority, the vast majority of our capital improvement plan is going to be in the out years, so years 6 through 10. So though COVID may have an impact on how quickly you do some things over the first couple of years of adoption of this plan, we still have to recognize that this has a 10-year planning horizon to it. And we can all say that times were exceptionally tough 10 years ago when we went through the Great Recession. But when we started doing this master plan last year, which was less than 10 years after the Great Recession, or at about that time, things were going pretty well for most of the country. And so I think it's important to recognize that, yes, we're presenting a plan and we're asking for adoption based on some really big numbers at a really bad time. We also have to not just get so focused on what we can't do this plan because of COVID. Eventually, the economy will rebound, and eventually we will be back to good times. It just may simply mean that we are delaying some of the initial implementation around this capital improvement plan. So again, these were the 3 summary of the tiers. The sustainable project, life cycle replacement, is about $18 million. The expanded services project is about $1.2, and the visionary projects, which is really made up of a lot of development around Aquaferia Park, makes up the big number here. And of course, one of the things that we recognize is your community very much values your park system, and they also rated it really, really high in terms of its condition and quality. And that is part and parcel to the fact that you all have done a really good job of continually reinvesting in your park system. So if 10 years comes and goes, and your population doesn't increase at the rate that's being projected right now, you still have a really solid park system that provides really high quality amenities to it. And when we look at those first two buckets of sustainable and expanded services, that's your reinvestment dollar figure for your existing park system over the next 10 years. So when we look at it and we say, if we had to make some decisions or trade-offs between taking care of what you already have versus building new, and you purely looked at it through the lens of reinvesting in what you already have, those dollar figures of close to $20 million is pretty small compared to the bigger picture dollars associated with the visionary projects. When we talk about it, again, in terms of that capital improvement, the entire capital improvement plan, existing parks, existing trails, new park development, administrative projects, that's kind of how it breaks down. One of the thing to not get too concerned about is the fact that there are some visionary projects that will occur within your existing park system, and in particular historic properties that carry big dollar figures. So that is where some of that reinvestment in your existing park system doesn't show up on the sustainable side, shows up on the visionary side. But again, it's still about taking care of what you already have. And then, of course, as I alluded to, the majority of this is backloaded, and it is very contingent upon population increases and your need to expand your park system based on growth. So parks maintenance is that operational component, and we provided some analysis previously. But again, I think it's important to recognize that parks maintenance is a combination of town park maintenance operations as well as contracted services. But when we look at it in total, and we recognize that the majority of dollars spent on parks maintenance is through the town's park maintenance staff, and we start to look at it and say, how much money do you spend on a per acre basis for each one of your park classifications, and compare them against best practice cost per acre in this part of the country, you're pretty well aligned. There are many agencies that we walk into and show $2, $3, $4 million annual operating deficits, and their system shows that, because they don't have enough dollars to manage and maintain the system that they made decisions on to build in the past. And so the town has done a great job of really embracing that total cost of ownership, and this cost of service summary bears that out in quantitative data. When we think about programming, again, programming has carrying costs to them. But again, we want to ensure that your carrying costs associated with programming is aligned with doing the things that have the highest community need. And I know that you're a big special events town, and I know it's probably been hard to not do special events, but yet at the same time, that will come back. And so again, we just kind of take those priorities and start to create some higher level strategies for you that say, what should you do? Should you expand this? Should you continue this? Should you consider? And when we say consider, it's got to be the right thing to do at the right time that has the right cost benefit. One of the things that we provided that I am not showing here tonight that's in the master plan is a pretty detailed cost of service analysis for the recreation services as well as art and culture. And staff has embraced that methodology about really how much it's costing in taxpayer dollars for every touch that you have in a program. And the whole point is to, where possible, to minimize either through a pricing strategy or through increased participation, minimize the amount of taxpayer dollars that go to support every participant taking place in or participating in a program or an event. So, for example, a program from a pure financial perspective in which it's costing a taxpayer $1 for that person to participate in that program always sounds a lot better than it costing that a different program where it's costing the taxpayer $20 for that person to participate in that program. So we have kind of created a methodology around this in such a way that allows us to recognize where it's okay to subsidize programs more and where we should not be having a high level of subsidy. And all of that information is in the master plan. So when we talk about implementation, and I'm hitting the home stretch here, there is more detail in the master plan that I'm going to show you, but there are some really just kind of key elements, key themes that kind of come out of this. And it's really about growing your park system in commensurate with growth of population. Trails, and we recognize that this is something that is a huge focus for you, but we also recognize that this is something that needs to be worked through with the development community. And so understanding the importance of trails needs to be a part of the conversation when we talk about park development. It can't just be about neighborhood parks. Parkland improvements, that's taking care of what you already have. Economic development through park development, and this speaks to Agua Fria Park and the opportunities that may allow you to do, which is potentially to build parks that aren't just necessarily meant to be used by the residents of Prescott Valley. In other words, do you have opportunities with these parks to create a mega special event venue that attracts people from the valley? Do you have opportunities for athletic fields that can serve as an impetus for sports tourism, especially during the summer months when it is so hot, and even those shoulder months when, I mean, it's been over 100 degrees in the valley in April, and we know that it's been over 100 degrees in October as well. So it's really about understanding that you do have an opportunity through future development at Agua Fria Park to look at it through that lens of it being an economic development tool for the town. Recreation programming, again, continue to try and increase your participation in programs. The more people you have in your programs, the less subsidy you have on a per participant basis. Operations and staffing continue, and I think this is really important. It's about empowering and training the current staff, but also growing your staff as your system grows. So again, that total cost of ownership that I always look at it and say, take a rubber band and stretch it, and stretch it, and stretch it. And then eventually, if you stretch it that one more time, it's going to break. That's the same thing that happens with a parks maintenance budget. The adage of doing more with less only works until that point right before the rubber band breaks. And if you try to continue to develop parks without growing parks maintenance, the quality of your parks start to decrease, the experience starts to decrease, those satisfaction numbers start to decrease, and then people start to complain about sales tax dollars and sales tax rates because they're not seeing it in an outward-facing way in terms of quality related to parks. And then Brian's complaints about the park system increases, and then you have this entire whirling of staff time being spent putting out fires as to proactively planning how to make experiences better. There's just a whole lot of tentacles to that, and I think it's important to recognize that. And then the last one is financing the park system. We've identified, not I, we've identified that you have 6 primary funding sources. With grants being one, the Parks Foundation being a second one, capital improvement fees that come through the town's capital improvement budget, park development fees, bond issues. Likely we'll take a bond issue to develop Agua Fria Park, and then of course partnerships such as what you're potentially doing with the YMCA. So again, it's a very, I would say, a very data-driven master plan. I think it is meant to be a guide. It is not, master plans are meant to be dynamic, and they are meant to be updated because some of the information is really based on projections of population growth. And of course, available of, economic or financing of the system. But you all, in a nutshell, you all are doing an absolutely great job with the park system. And so I think what the master plan does is it allows you an opportunity to understand what your path is going forward in a very data-driven, detailed way to build upon your current successes. So that 10 years from now, when we come back and do another master plan, knock on wood, that we'll have been able to look at the recommendations within the master plan that we have provided and recognize that they were implementable, they were realistic because you were actually able to do them. So as Brian said, our next steps are really final master plan presentations to town council, assuming you all are okay with making that recommendation for adoption. So. Questions, concerns, comments, suggestions?
I'm always a little fearful when I hear 100%, on anything.
Looks good, Beth.
So what
Go ahead.
What was someone else going?
Go ahead.
Okay. So what guaranteed it, or what gives you so much confidence that it'll be 100% in master planned and not?
That is the town's path forward in terms of growth. The town, from a community development perspective, is completely focused on having the best way to say it is they have identified through zoning and their community development policy in the general plan that says growth is only going to occur in our communities through master plan communities. The 30,000 foot level overarching umbrella associated with that is through master plan communities, you can ensure a certain level of growth paying for itself. So in other words, growth contributing to your park system through the development of neighborhood parks. Whereas in many communities, they allow subdivisions of 20 or 35 to go in, and they throw some money in the coffer that's never enough to acquire land, let alone build it. And so the way things have been set up is that it basically allows for the community to allow itself to grow, pay for itself. The other thing that you have as an advantage in your community that a lot of communities don't have is you have the land to do that. So in other words, a developer can come in and not just find 25 acres to build on because it's the last piece of land to build on, but you have large acreage and swaths of land that they can come in, and even if it's a phased-in master plan community, it's still going to be on them to provide certain amenities as part of that master plan community, even if they build it in phases.
I would like to say that this master plan has been money well spent. I mean, it's been an eye-opener for all of us on both commissions on what the future holds for Prescott Valley and where we need to go. And it's things that we don't know. So the money that is spent on you to come and help us learn the things that the future is going to hold for Prescott Valley has just been outstanding. I just can't wait for this to go to council and hope our community is going to move forward.
allow you to manage. Yes.
Are there any commissioners that are online with us that have questions for our presenter this evening?
You know, I think that we got a lot of good news in our first presentations. We are meeting needs to a degree that surprised me, and I'm really excited about that. And these look like best next steps. It looks good to me.
Yeah, and I'll make a comment. Mike, you really did an excellent job with this and gave us a lot of tools that we can use over the next 10 years. I had a chance to go through this, and it just really looks excellent. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I absolutely agree. You've done a magnificent job with this, and clarifying and sorting out and making it understandable for all of us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a huge math problem. We appreciate you.
Also,
This is Andy. I think we could do some more marketing of the community and our assets down in the Phoenix area. While fishing late winter over in Fane Park, I talked to people that were from the Phoenix area, and they come up here to see snow. We take our snow for granted. As a matter of fact, quite often it's a hassle. But people down in the Phoenix area want to see snow, so we could do some very simple marketing, just like Flagstaff advertises the Snow Bowl. We have snow. We have other assets.
I have grandsons who play baseball in Scottsdale, and they've been up here for tournaments in the summertime. And they love coming up here because the weather is not so hot. But we could do a better job, not that it isn't good, but we could do a better job of making their experience here much better than it has been in terms of welcoming and being an open arms kind of community for this. And this, what you said about that kind of thing alludes to this.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think one of the key drivers is, you know, I think you can qualify yourself as a small town, even if at 50,000 folks. But if that growth happens in the next 15 years and you get closer to 100,000 folks, you know, people might be looking at you sideways as to why you call yourself a town. Just because of growth. When you start getting around 100,000 people, you start playing in a different, it becomes a whole different arena in terms of people knowing about you and people being aware. I think people are generally aware of Prescott Valley, but I think when you get to 100,000 people, that becomes kind of a big game changer for you.
And I just had one more question. With the 111 million visionary, is that based off the 100,000 people we need to service? Because it seems like a rather big number for like a small town of 50,000. Is that proportionately a big number, or is it just the right?
No, well, I think it's really based on the fact that your population's going to double. And so it's really based on the fact that you need to add 212 acres of parkland related to Agua Fria Park. And there's potentially not necessarily a lot of land acquisition costs associated with that, but park development costs on raw land are going to be significant. For sure. And we did build in kind of a 5% escalator, and that's a good number for today. Construction costs may actually come down over the next couple of years because there's going to be so many people competing for work. But eventually that 5% seems to be a pretty good indicator. So in today's dollars, it's not that much. But when we start to think 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 years out, those numbers have a tendency to escalate.
All right.
All right.
All right, Commissioners, if there are no further questions for Mike, I would like to request of both commissions, we'll do it independently, again, seeking motion as well as then providing a roll call vote. This recommendation would reflect your acceptance of the Park and Rec Master Plan and moving that item forward to the Town Council for their review and consideration. If there are no further questions, I would call upon the Arts and Culture Commission for a motion again to this request.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of this to move forward to its next step.
Okay. Is there a
I
second?
second it.
Thank you, Andy. So I have a first and a second. With the motion made, may I ask for a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Wise?
Chairperson Quisenberry?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair?
Yes.
Commissioner Lyra?
Yes.
Commissioner Moss?
Yes.
Chairperson Gummer?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Balkin?
Ms. Wise?
Yes.
May I stop you just for a second?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. You're a go-getter. I appreciate that. With the roll call vote, we have approval from the Arts and Culture Commission. I now like to ask from the Parks and Recreation Commission for their motion and a second, if such motion is made.
I would like to excitedly make a motion for this master plan to go forward to our council.
I second.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
Very happily.
Thank you. So now, may we have roll call vote for the Parks and Recreation Commission?
Chairperson Gummer?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Polikin?
Yes.
Commissioner Brinkman?
Yes.
Commissioner Byram?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman?
Yes.
Commissioner Pierce?
Yes.
All right. Both commissions full roll call vote, all in unanimous. Thank you each as your independent commissions for your acceptance. This item will move forward. We'll invite Mike to come back. I believe it's to our May 28th date with Town Council, and we will again make this presentation to them, answer any of their questions and concerns, and then follow that discussion for vote in a June meeting. So thank you all. Congratulations. I appreciate your hard work, dedication, support of staff, and engagement of the community in regards to the surveys and process that this master plan has come forward with. With that being said, we'll encourage Mike to hit the road, be safe. The sun has not set on him quite yet. Mike, thank you so much for all your help and hard work.
Yes, Mike, thank you so much for all the hard work.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. We'll move on to our next item, 5B, in our adjusted schedule. This will be programs, classes, and special events. For our Park and Recreation Commissioners that may not be familiar with this beautiful face over here, this is Miss Isabella Tuning. She is one of our recreation coordinators in supporting our Arts and Culture Division, and I will have her provide us with a review of some slides that we have going on. So if we could have our PowerPoint presentation of slides and materials, and Miss Bella, if you would mind taking over. Thank you.
All right. Wait for that slide to come up. Perfect. All right, so just about this time of year, every year, we usually have our Movies Under the Stars series starting up. In light of the current situation, we've actually kind of adjusted this year, and we've figured out that 2 drive-in movies are going to be our best way to go about this. So we're announcing a drive-in movie on May 29th and a drive-in movie on June 5th, both in the Event Center parking lot, like we do our drive-in movies in the past. And this year we're going to be showing on May 29th Space Jam. So super fun movie there, basketball movie. And on June 5th, we're going to be showing A League of Their Own. So we're going patriotic, we're going upbeat, family friendly, and we're going to be releasing more information about the specifics of these drive-in movies in these coming next 2 or 3 weeks, coming up to the May 29th. And of course, just keep in mind we're going to be adjusting things as we find out more about rules, regulations about the pandemic and all those types of things. Thank you. So keep a lookout for more information about those drive-in movies. And, okay. All right, and then the next one here, our pool, we're preparing to open on Saturday, May 23rd, Mountain Valley Splash Pool. So again, I'm going to keep saying this a lot tonight, but in light of the current situation, things are changing, things are going to have to change, but luckily, just today, our governor did issue new guidance for pools reopening. We have been preparing to reopen, and so now with this new guidance, we will, under new restrictions and new guidelines, we will be able to reopen on May 23rd, Saturday. And of course, we're going to be taking those precautions and changing our methods, and those will be made public to everyone before you come to the pool. You can always call Mountain Valley Splash Pool at 928-775-3165 with your questions, or you can just email us at parks, P-A-R-K-S, at pvaz.net if you have any questions about what that pool season is going to look like, what the schedule might look like. If you hop on our website, www.pvaz.net, you will see the most up-to-date information that we've put out about our pool schedule this year, and that's going to be changing as we have more info.
Yes, ma'am. What we're anticipating is, now that we have this level of guidance now coming from our governor, we're going to see how that fits with our operation model that we've been strategizing with up until this point in time. We're hoping to then have that schedule reviewed, analyzed, and then put some action steps in that will allow for promotion. A large part of this component will be seen created for online reservations, use, those types of things. So it will become a new normal, I hate to say that, in regards to changes. We won't go back to the old traditional schedule because of the restrictions that we are now learning about, and we'll be working to facilitate those. So bear with us for a little bit of time. We are not ready to quite jump out there with that schedule, but we will have a schedule of quite a bit of activity that'll be filled with lap swimming and aerobics and swim lessons. And open swim is where we'll probably see the most significant changes. That will be reflective of, as we're reading just this afternoon, a little bit after 3 o'clock, that we will have some limited attendance. We will have some distancing requirements, as we will with all of our services for quite some time, but we'll also have some operational changes as well too. And we'll work to present those things and hopefully do so in a very fluid process so that everyone understands and is able to adapt to them moving forward. So we're just excited that not only we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, we're actually climbing out of the tunnel itself. So looking forward to some good things for our aquatic season this summer.
Yeah. So on that note, we've got some other things kind of coming up this summer, this spring and summer. Kids to Parks Day is Saturday, May 16th. So again, this year we're doing things a little differently. We're trying to bring these activities to you electronically through our social media. So for Kids to Parks Day, you're going to want to hop on our Facebook and our Instagram. Find us at PV Parks Rec. That's PVPARKSREC on Instagram and on Facebook. You're going to find we put out things every single day, not only just new activities for things like Kids to Parks Day, but also information about the pool will be found there, information about reopening, all those types of things. For Kids to Parks Day, we're going to have a really fun, like how to bird watch and how to wildflower hunt, that you can get out there with your kids and do some fun activities in our parks. Join us on May 16th for that. Same with National Trails Day. So this year we're going to be celebrating National Trails Day together electronically, so we can get out and we may not be able to gather all together at the trails, but we can share photos of ourselves at the trails and with the community. And again, find us on Instagram and Facebook, and make sure you hashtag PV Parks and Rec, and that way we can really get community together. Even if we can't all be together on the trail, we can see that everyone is still coming out and doing that. So that's Saturday, June 6th. But always we encourage you to come out and use our trails all the time. All right, and then Saturday, June 13th, a little later in the summer, we have Family Health and Fitness Day. So same with this, we're going to be sharing with you guys some really fun ways for you to get out and have some fun with your whole family, with the kids, and do some outdoor fitness activities using our parks, using our trails, those kinds of things. So again, check us out on PV Parks Rec on Instagram and on Facebook. And this is just another reminder for you, Instagram, Facebook, and then of course www.pvaz.net/parks. That's where you can find us. Another great way to keep informed about everything we have going on is going to be to go onto our website, pvaz.net/parks, and there's an option where you can go and put your email in and actually register, and that way you can get some email updates from us. We don't do a ton. We're not going to be sending every day into your inbox, but we are going to keep you informed about pool reopening. We're going to keep you informed about our classes getting started again. And, our drive-ins, we'll be sending that out via email as well. So if you want to be up to date on everything, that's definitely the best way to go about and do it. All right.
So that is our updates for programs, classes, and special events. If there are no questions, we'll move on to item 6, department updates. Just in regards to the sake of time, I know as a matter of your packets, you've had a variety of different months of the department's updates. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have concerning not only my report, but all the other divisions and activities that we have there. I think the biggest thing that you will reflect is in regards to the monthly statistics and how that has dramatically changed, where you're seeing zeros that were never there before. But it sounds as if we're going to begin that upswing, change that frown from upside down and make it right, and do all those fun things as life's going to come back in our swing. So are there any questions concerning the department's report for March and April of 2020? Any questions from the Arts and Culture Commission?
No.
No, sir.
Not here.
Okay, good. All right, are there any questions from the Parks and Recreation Commission? Hearing none, I think we're in great shape. With that, I would like to turn over the floor to our chairperson's report and call upon Chairperson Quisenberry for Arts and Culture.
I'm just going to keep this one short and sweet. Try to get there early for the drive-in movie. You won't want to miss either of them. If you haven't seen either of them, definitely go to the drive-in movie. They are the best. Outside of that, wash your hands. Don't touch your face. That's all I've got.
Love you bunches, Link. Thank you very much for that. For our Parks and Recreation Commission Chair report, Commissioner Gummer.
Yes, I don't know if you've all heard, but there's been some kind of a virus that's been going around. So I thought I would do a little investigating and find out that people were very happy that parks and trails stayed open so they could not go crazy by being stuck in the house. So an overwhelming majority of adults in the United States find exercising at their local parks and trails essential to maintaining their mental and physical health during the COVID-19 pandemic. Over half note it is very essential to be able to walk, jog, hike, or bike. Visitors should keep physical distancing in mind whenever visiting local parks and trails, however. 83% of adults in the United States agree their local parks and trails were essential during the whole COVID pandemic. Nearly 3 in 5 adults say access to these amenities were essential for their health, both mental and physical. Numerous studies show these mental and physical health benefits to spending time in parks and on our trails. To date, more than 1,000 groups nationwide have signed on to voice support of the safe use of the parks during this crisis. Our parks and trails are open, so get out there and enjoy them, and everybody stay safe.
Now the bathrooms are open, right?
That's exactly right. Thank you.
Very
Great segue.
important.
We were announced just this last week in regards to a number of our different amenities. Our parks have always remained open. Our trails have always remained open. But as a matter of some protocols, some governor executive orders, things of that nature, we were unfortunately needed to provide the proper reactions. And so our restrooms closed along with the dog park, the bike skate park, our pickleball courts, our basketball courts, those types of things, working to ensure social distancing as well as then also common touch points and things of that nature. Unfortunately, we did incur not only some vandalism and damage, but also some theft of some materials. It was very limited, but unfortunately it did occur. Our parks, all of those different amenities that I just mentioned, along with our restrooms, reopened last week on the 6th. Our parks team is very proud to report that there have been 0 incidents in regards to the reopening. They're doing a very good job of advancing additional sanitary procedures at our restroom facilities, also on our playgrounds as well too, doing the very best they can, as well as trying to continue their regular duties as they are assigned. And as we all know, spring season is fast upon us in regards to mowing schedules, irrigation control systems, all of those different types of things, and then also our use going on out there. So thank you, world, town of Prescott Valley, for your patience, your consideration, your civility in regards to working with us here in Parks and Recreation. Big shout out to the staff for making those efforts happen. I'd also like to thank our recreation staff, as you heard tonight announced by Isabella, the amount of service that we were striving to be able to provide folks remotely for their continued engagement, their mental health and wellness, as Chairperson Gummer announced in regards to activities. We're going to continue to do some of those things, but we're also going to be switching gears because we feel very strong and confident in regards to the reopening of Arizona, and we want to make sure that we can be there as soon as possible, but also be reflective of those safety elements for the public as well as our own staff's welfare, and making sure that that happens in an appropriate way. Patience is a virtue. Exercise that virtue and that patience, because life is what you make of it, and it should be a positive framework to gather from. So, with that being said, our next item on the Tree Advisory Board, item 7, Chairperson Gummer, and I have a few items of support or comment on this as well.
Yes, I know that it's been so long since we've been able to talk about this that the last I knew we had put in the grants.
Yes.
And we're hoping to hear from that.
We do, and we'll have a few little announcements a little bit later in our agenda. But as we are all unfortunately aware of, our Arbor Day celebration did not happen in the traditional sense. It was one of those items of reflection that we had to take in regards to canceling that, where we typically have a couple of hundred of our nearby elementary school students. We have several families, sponsors, supporters, donators, volunteers. We have a pretty healthy crowd for our event. We had a fabulous activity scheduled over at Santa Fe Park, the new one, putting in a tree canopy at a brand new park that does not have one. Unfortunately, that did not occur, But again, our creative staff came up with an awesome list of things to do every single day during that week in celebration of Arbor Day. These actually also received approvals from the Arbor Day Foundation and are being accepted as portions of our renewals for next year. So that's a very exciting thing to be able to have, and the fact that they recognize that our efforts to make Arbor Day the best that we possibly could are going to be allowable for next year's renewals, because Arbor Day celebration is one of those required components. Our proclamation was read by council, so we're still on the right steps, doing it in a different way and making those different types of things happen. I'll get into some of our grant aspects because we do have a presentation tonight for you in providing those updates. So I'll just kind of reserve until that time frame there in doing those things. We'll continue to move forward. Again, during the COVID experience, we've been a little restricted in regards to our Tree City Board, making those things happen, but we'll get that started soon enough as we go through those plans and efforts as well. So with that, if there's no other comments or additional information on our Tree Advisory Board business for Parks and Recreation, I would encourage us to move on to item 8, old business, and we can review some grant application updates. With that being said, our Arizona Forestry Grant is going into its final quarter of process and development. We did receive feedback that we are good to go for putting in those trees that are part of that grant program. We're going to be making those things happen through staff processes as opposed to what we had already planned for volunteer services, being able to make that balance within the budget. So we've reviewed that for those administrators, and we're good to go for that. So here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be making those things happen over at Santa Fe Park, doing those different types of things and the allowables within that grant program. So we'll be able to successfully complete our program of service there and receive those donated grant funds to our project. With that being said, I think we can click on a couple of other grant opportunities. Being able to switch over, I think you should be able to go through those slides. Yes, sir. We just have a couple of quick ones. I'm going to jump in with another item related to Parks and Recreation. Then Isabella will chime in regards to a variety of other additional items related to our grants. The department has submitted in partnership with the Prescott Valley Friends of Parks and Recreation to the Arizona Community Trust for Yavapai County. It is focusing on also a landscape grant that it will provide for services over at Santa Fe Park. We've submitted the application. We've actually heard responses back from the board and their review panel. They wanted to learn a little bit more in-depth information in regards to that plan of service. They are going to be going back, they recessed for a period of time. They'll be reconvening right at the tail end of the month of May, and then providing recommendations right before the month ends. All of the paperwork and approvals that'll go through, and basically sometime in the first half of June, be able to take it into action for accomplishment. So that'll be lovely. It'll take us into our next fiscal year in doing those things. So with that, those are our 2 Parks and Recreation related grants, and Mrs. Tuning will now focus on some of our art and culture grant opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, so under kind of the umbrella of arts and culture, we've been hard at work in a number of grants. So through the Arizona Community Foundation of Yavapai County, we have submitted a grant and are...
Hey, Isabella, could you get just a little bit closer to that mic, please?
Is that better?
Or at all? Yeah, I can't see you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's better.
Okay. All right, so I'll just say it again. Through the Arizona Community Foundation of Yavapai County, we have submitted a grant. Now I'm too loud. We have submitted a grant in regards to our summer concert series and our Movies Under the Stars programs. So they have come back with some questions for us about how the COVID situation is going to affect those, and we were able to provide them a plan as far as doing drive-in movies and maybe some electronic concerts for our community instead. So we're waiting to hear back about that one. That's a late June timeline on that one. And second, we have submitted a grant for review through the Jewish Community Foundation of Yavapai County. This grant we wrote to expand our Art at the Center program. This picture in the middle here is an example of one of our sculptures as part of our Art at the Center program, and one of the things that the Commission and the Art at the Center Committee have decided to pursue is adding QR codes to our sculptures. That way people can go ahead and scan those QR codes in on their smart device and be linked to an audio recording of not only the explanation of the piece and the artist, but also the art history around the piece. So a really great expansion of our program there. Again, we're waiting to hear back on that one for review. We have another grant submitted for the National Endowment for the Humanities CARES Act, which was actually just in this last week or so made available through COVID relief funding. So we jumped on that one as quickly as we could. Basically, that one was looking for funding for programs that were diminished or gotten rid of altogether because of the COVID situation. So we were looking at Family Arts Festival, Gold Fever Days, potentially movies, potentially summer concert series, those things that were or are going to be affected by this situation, and trying to figure out a way to do those things and offer those things electronically for our town. So that's something that we are waiting to hear back from. That's a really quick turnaround, and we will be hearing back by June. So we have those 3 submitted. And then we have 3 grants that are in development. We're working on 2 grants for our community monument project, or the Lakeshore Sculpture Project, through the National Endowment for the Humanities and the National Endowment for the Arts. So we're pursuing both of those grants, which are a July timeline for submission for that community monument project. And again, for the Art at the Center expansion, we're pursuing a grant through the AZ Humanities Project grant. Similarly to the National Endowment for the Humanities, it's the Arizona chapter for that one as well. So got those in the works.
We do have a little bit of a delay in response coming from the Arizona Game and Fish Commission on a grant submittal that was made to improve the fisheries and some of the operation equipment there for both Fain Lake and the urban lakes. So we were hoping to have that information for tonight's presentation, but unfortunately it is not quite there. Informally, I think we've been 100% successful on it, but the realities are until the notice is given, it's not in hand. So we're not going to focus or dwell on that one other than the fact that we're thinking we're pretty good there with those things coming forward, and now's the right time to be able to make those adaptations in regards to aeration and water quality at both of those lakes. And I think it will continue to enhance relationships with our community fishing partner through Game and Fish for future development. So we're pretty excited about those opportunities. But as you can see, COVID may knock some things out, but it helps open the doors on some other activities. And again, kudos to the team. They've been quite active. And thank you, Commissioner Sinclair, for sharing a couple of those opportunities, because we have been able to react quite effectively and I believe fit it exactly right in schedule, because we had until about 9 o'clock last night to complete those processes, and We had to keep Isabella up past her bedtime to make those things happen. So
we got them done.
Yes, we did. So, outstanding. Any questions in regards to our grants from either one of our commissions?
Yes, it's Andy. Isabella, you mentioned you applied for the National Endowment for the Humanities for the Community Monument, and you also mentioned another grant for the monument. Which grant was that?
That one was one of the ones that you did provide for us, the National Endowment for the Arts, and that's one that we're going to start to research and develop looking into as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I believe if memory serves, each one of those has a July application timeline to it. So what we've done is prioritize our applications to coincide with due dates, and we've got those two that we've pushed out just a little bit to be able to manage and maintain, but we are actively looking at those. We've completed a number of different support elements that are required for each one of those applications. So I would imagine we're probably about at the 20% mark. We might even be a little bit better than that for those. But there are going to be some engagement requirements either via work study or regular meetings with the committee and the commission, both, as we go through the submittal processes on those.
If we're lucky with the Humanities and the Arts grants, they ask for a match. Since the town has already said they could contribute up to, $50,000 for the base, that could be our match. That's basically half the cost of the monument.
Correct.
Putting the town's money and the grant money together. So that would be a good deal.
Yes, and then if there's anything extra needed, we're aware we're counting on your checkbook as well.
Understand.
I'm surprised I got that response. Thank you, Andy. All right. Any other questions related to both grant applications by either one of the commissions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. We have a quick little recap. This is an element out of a past canceled Arts and Culture Commission, and this is a recap report on Youth Arts Month. Isabella.
Yeah, so we just wanted to give a quick recap of Youth Arts Month. It unfortunately was cut almost 3 weeks short this year. Our Youth Arts Month is a display in the Civic Center building and the public library, which both had to be closed. When those buildings closed, we took the exhibit down and we were able to get those artworks back to the teachers and then to the students. So unfortunately, it looked a little different this year, but we were able to have our opening, we were able to have our jury process and give out those awards to the kids before we had to take the show down. So the kids were able to see their artwork up, the families were able to come and celebrate the kids, so it was all good there. We showcased 13 schools, which was a really wonderful turnout, and then on top of that, the library actually had their teen librarians showcase some artwork of homeschooled students as well, which was wonderful. And we actually had over 300 students have their work showcased. So an interesting year for Youth Art Month, but still a successful year. Yeah.
All right. Any questions or concern from the Arts and Culture Commission?
No concerns. I think we did the best we could with what we had. I got to go to our artist reception, and it was a really positive experience, lots of families, and I like the direction that we're heading for next year.
Agreed. All right. With that being said, then, our next item of business, 8C, Old Business Santa Fe Station Park Construction Updates. If you have not been by, isn't it? Yes, I'm getting whispered comments about how pretty it is. Very proud. We actually had delivered, flew it in place, and we now have our new restroom building. It is functional. with the exception that unfortunately still yet to be delivered to the site are the electrical utilities. But the beauty is we've got some really nice windows in that place. So you can fully use the restroom facilities there. They are open and available. As soon as the utilities are hooked up to that, the lights are on, the hand dryers we have there will also be available to you for your use. Once that happens, pickleball lights will be available at night for those particular 4 courts that are out there. There's little timer switches that we have available, but they will also turn out just a few minutes after scheduled park closing times during that. Other elements there, we've already discussed the trees and those other components that will be coming and finishing off our 4th quarter forestry grant project, so that'll be happening. And we've submitted and will be presenting to council next week during our next fiscal year budget allocation, and hopefully we will be supported with the finishing touches for that park in this next fiscal year. I know it'll be a very challenged decision for council to make because of some of the diminished revenues that are being realized by the town as well as the state, so we're being very hopeful for that. So that'll address the landscaping elements with shrubbery, additional trees, landscape rock, those types of things. So we're hopeful that that will take place, and by fall of next year we can have that wrapped up with a nice little bow on it. So that is our status right now on Santa Fe Station Park and its construction updates. Does the Park and Rec Commission have any questions?
So in the new restroom, were we able to get 2-ply toilet paper, or is there still a shortage of that?
No, we have 800 grit for you, sir.
Perfect. I've been waiting to go.
Outstanding. All right. With that completed then, if there's no other questions on Santa Fe Station Park, we'll look at new business. Item B. This is a presentation by staff, Ms. Isabella, concerning a donation of sculpture to the Art at the Center Permanent Collection. Ms. Isabella.
Yeah, so I'm actually really glad that we have the Parks and Rec commissioners here as well tonight, because this is kind of a tie-over for both. A wonderful local artist, Mr. Gene Galazan, has offered to generously donate another set of sculptures to the town through the Art at the Center collection. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the horses up on right next to the Summit Trail that we installed in 2019. Those were also by Mr. Gene Galazan, and those have just been received so wonderfully by the town, and kind of a nice different option. We have our collection of Art at the Center here on the Civic Center campus, and we have a lot of sculptures around at different parks, but so far we don't have a sculpture at Fane Park. So these images that you're seeing are a mock-up of what it could potentially look like. Mr. Gene Galazan's sculptures are a mixture of steel and wood found objects, and so they can kind of contextualize really nicely in nature. They blend really nicely with the trees, and so this is where we've decided to place the ones that he is potentially donating. And this is the Fane Park looking from the bridge towards the sculpture on the peninsula, and then from the peninsula towards the bridge, if you are all familiar with that. So any questions about what we're looking at or kind of the process of that donation?
None for me. We went over this recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, now this would be an item where we're looking for a motion in a second. We'll do a roll call vote for it. If it meets with your approval, then staff would present to the town council at the May 18th regular meeting for their acceptance, and then we would set up schedule with Mr. Galazan with his approvals, collect the donated sculptures, and then put it in work orders with our parks staff for their installation sometime this summer. So if that is your interest, then we'd be looking for those motions and seconds.
I'd like to make a motion to send our generous donation forward to council for its next step of approval. I love it.
Second.
I second it.
All right. So with a first and a second, may we have roll call vote, please?
Chairperson Quisenberry?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair?
Yes. Does the sculpture have a name?
It does not have a name. Untitled.
Andy. Its name is Andy.
No.
Commissioner Lear?
I think that sculpture, the bridge, should be called the Singing Bridge and Sculpture.
We're in the middle of a vote.
Commissioner Lyra?
Yes.
Commissioner Moss?
Yes.
All right, we have unanimous recommendation to move to council. This again will appear on their May 18th agenda for acceptance of the donation of artwork by Mr. Gene Galazan. All right. Next on our agenda is, what do I have here? Review of the fiscal year 2021 meeting schedules. Again, these are located in your meeting packet as presented last week. These dates have been selected. They focused on the traditional schedule of the Arts and Culture Commission as it has typically been presented. You notice there are a few months in which the meetings are not scheduled. That is reflective based upon programs, events, special events, and activities that the Commission is directly engaged in. And we are looking for your comments, your directions. If there are no issues with the presented calendar, we would be looking for your motion and second for approval of that calendar that then could be placed upon permanent record and its operation in the next fiscal year starting August 2020. Is there a motion by the Arts and Culture Commission?
I would like to make a motion to approve our next set of meeting dates for our work study as well as our commission meeting dates as written. Aren't we adding a June date?
We will be, but that will be a matter of current fiscal year and that operating schedule.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lyra. With a first and a second, can I have a roll call approving vote?
Chairperson Quisenberry?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair?
Yes.
Commissioner Lyra?
Yes.
Commissioner Moss?
Yes.
All right. We have approval of that, so we will submit that and put it into play. For the betterment of time and everyone's focus, no one's quite asleep yet, but we're seeing a little nods here and there, and I can appreciate that. Pretty much as it reiterated for the Arts and Culture Commission, same process for Arts and Culture for Parks and Recreation. You'll see a couple of absences within that schedule, pretty much reflecting July, which is your summer vacation, December for your winter vacation. I don't know why you take vacations, but that's okay. You're a busy bunch, and I appreciate your time and energy. If we could, seek a motion in a second approving the schedule as presented for Park and Recreation Commission meetings.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
To approve the meeting schedule.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Can we have a roll call vote for approval, please?
Chairperson Gummer?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Polican?
Yes.
Commissioner Brinkman?
Yes.
Commissioner Byram?
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman?
Yes.
Commissioner Pierce?
Yes.
All right, we have approval for the Park and Rec Commission meeting schedule. Thank you, each commission, for your acceptance and approvals of the presented schedules by staff. Next, for your information, this is a matter of routine business and operation. Each fiscal year, we have a change of officers. Our officers are reflected with a chair, a vice chair, and a communications secretary. We'd just like to bring to your attention that we have each one of those. We'll need to be considering at your June scheduled meetings nominations for each of those positions and elections that will take place. Those then will be taking their positions into the next fiscal calendar as it has already been approved for this evening. So just be prepared with that. If you are the chair and you have served for 2 consecutive terms, you are no longer eligible. In other words, you're off the hook for a little while, okay? If you have not served 2 consecutive full terms and you would like to be considered for a second term, that is more than acceptable. That is the only position that has those consecutive limitations, okay? We would just like to have that discussion amongst yourself, your considerations, and we'll go through a nomination process and election at the next meeting. Is that understood, conveyed, and in agreement, commissions?
Yes. Message received.
Yes.
All right. Cool beans. I think we're good to go there. Our last item under new business is staff request for the addition of a Arts and Culture Commission meeting that would be scheduled for Wednesday, June 17th at its regular scheduled time of 6:30 p.m. here in the auditorium at the library, and if still necessary, online electronic processes. I hope we don't have to reach that. Not that this has been bad by any means. It has been quite unique, and I really do love the Brady Bunch effect that's on screen, and I hope our viewing public has enjoyed it too. We've got some good efficiencies there. But if the Arts and Culture Commission would motion with their acceptance and second that, we'll have a roll call for adding
5:30 p.m.
5:30 for regular? Okay, my apologies.
I move to approve the new meeting date for June 17th, yeah?
That's where we're at. If you're making that motion,
yes.
We'd love it. All right.
I'm making that motion. That motion's been made.
All right, we have a motion for that. Do we have a second?
Second.
For arts and culture.
Okay, cool. All right, we have a first and second. Do we have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Quisenberry?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair?
Yes.
Commissioner Lyra?
Yes.
Commissioner Moss?
Yes.
All right, it looks like we had full approval for that, so we'll be adding our June 17th meeting. We'll create that agenda and any other relevant items and present that to the Commission and post as soon as we possibly can. So thank you, Commission. Item number 10, other business. Or is there any other additional business from the Arts and Culture Commission?
No, sir.
Okay, hearing none. Is there any other business related to the Parks and Recreation Commission?
I have no business, but I would like to say that I was very happy with the Prescott Valley response to the virus, and in particular, of course, Parks and Rec, but the library saved my sanity. Somebody had the sense to put an outside drop-off and pickup. Prescott had to close down, by the way, Prescott Library. We didn't, and I visited our place regularly, and I was very, very happy with Prescott Valley as a whole.
Outstanding. Thank you for that.
You're supposed to go to the parks.
I did.
Read in a park.
I saw her. She was
Had the book in the park.
Yeah, there you go. Get that parks in there.
Anyway.
Any other business by the Parks and Recreation Commission? All right, hearing none, we'll move to item 11. Based upon attendance into tonight's meeting, as well as online registrants for participation in the commission, they have no additional unscheduled public appearances. We'll move on to item 12. Next meeting, we'll have Arts and Culture regular meeting on Wednesday, June 17th, again here in the auditorium. And Parks and Recreation will have their regular meeting on Tuesday, June 9th here in the auditorium. With that all being said, I would call for an adjournment of tonight's meeting. I will do that within the full authority vested in me, which is absolutely none. But I thank you for letting me be that representative to help us through this little awkward process of a joint meeting. But I tell you what, it was smooth. You all were very accepting of its process. Your technological skills remotely and your smiling faces on your computer cams are outstanding. Commissioners Sinclair and Polican, I'm sorry we could not get you added in visually, but audibly it was fantastic for our experiences here. We did a great job of social distancing, meeting the objectives. I couldn't be more proud of two groups that know how to live, work, and play very, very well together. So congratulations. We're going to go ahead and do a little sign-off, say goodbye. Hugs and kisses remotely to all of you. Have a great time and look forward to the soon coming announcements of the great things coming out of Parks and Rec, upcoming movies, drive-in experiences, grant applications, swimming schedule, programs and services. Cool. Thank you all very much. Have a great time. Be safe, be well, be smart. We'll talk to you soon.